I hate it when she answers my question with a question. Without hesitation, she does it every fucking time. No matter what the question or answer is, she answers my question with a question. She does it every time. Megan, what are we having for dinner? Does it look like what I made? Megan, where do you want to move the chair? Harold, where did I say I wanted to do that? Megan, you look sexy in that teddy bear. How about you ruin the sheets? What? Don't I look sexy in my flannel pajamas? Doesn't matter the topic. My questions are always answered with a question. The only time she failed to answer my question with a question was the very last question I ever asked her. What is the question? 5 simple little words with a question mark, but the hardest question to answer. Why should I want to stay? That was the one question she didn't have an answer for. The bad thing was that I knew she couldn't answer that question. Cheaters can never do that. They can give you the typical bullshit. But when it comes down to it, they don't know the answer. It just makes them see the truth. From the beginning, I should have known it would come to this. My marriage was doomed from the beginning. I should have just listened to my father and followed the rules. My father taught me the 10 rules a man should live by. 1. Life is fun until you mess it up. 2. Work is only hard when you don't want to do it. 3. If you want to know what your wife will look like in 20 years, look at her mother. 4. It takes a strong woman to be a good mother. 5. Friends are ponderous, but true bros are forever. 6. Never give your wife all your money. 7. Cheating pussy is worth half, no matter what the judge says. 8. Appearances fade, but beauty lasts forever. 9. If something looks like a duck, walks, and shakes like a duck, it's a fucking duck. 10. There are no bitches worth dying or going to jail for, so always plan, figure out the best way to get revenge and don't leave any fingerprints. My dad always said that if my mom disappeared and her purse was left behind, it was one of 2 things. She ran away, or he chased her away. If he chased her away, her purse would stay because he wouldn't give her anything. My dad always spoke loud enough for my mom to hear him. Son, she will walk away with what she entered this marriage with and no more. I always wondered what makes a person so tough. It was one of the little life lessons I learned later in life. I've never been a fan of telling my life story, so I won't, but I will tell it to you briefly. I was born in North Texas to a good family, and my dad kicked my ass every day, when I deserved it and sometimes when I didn't. My mom was the backbone of our family. My sisters Kelly and Ann were always there for me, and my little brother Carlton. Carlton is a jerk, but overall a good brother. Then there's Megan. I met Megan in 8th grade. She had big teenage boobs, and it was love at first sight for me. We didn't date until my 2nd year in college. From that point on, she was my girlfriend. For those of you wondering why it took us so long to become a couple, ask her father. This man was like the old criccoon, you know, the classic dog. If a male came within 1 foot of his daughter, he barked like a damn bloodhound. It took him 3 years to let me sit on their porch, then another year just to call her. And then it always sounded like he was eavesdropping on the phone before she could ask him if I could ask her out. He'd yell, "No!" So believe me when I tell you that he surprised the hell out of me when I asked for permission to marry Megan. He said, "Yes, son, you can." Son! The bastard just called me son. For the last 6 years, I've been called a bastard, a fucking asshole, a dumbass fool, and just as importantly, a king of shitheads. But now I'm his son. Deal with that shit. For me, married life was great. Our honeymoon was fucking amazing. I was 22 years old at the time. Life with Megan was anything but boring. For the next 15 years, life was hard but good. We worked, we played, we made love, and we had children. In fact, 3 kids. Tommy, Jessica, and Paul, our little angels. It wasn't until our 25th year when everything exploded. The only thing that kept me from leaving the country was the kids. 2 of the 3 kids were out of the house, and the 3rd was headed for the exit. Tommy was at the University of Florida. Jessica was at UCLA in Knoxville, and Paul had just graduated from high school and was on his way to Gainesville. But being a male child, he just had to have a lot of fun on his last night home. Paul acted like an ass and tried to drive home drunk. He hit a pole and ended up in the hospital. He was in critical condition. Megan and I rushed him to the hospital. They removed his spleen. He had a collapsed lung and needed a kidney. He needed a donor immediately. The doctor asked if he could do a blood test to determine if I was a match for him. Megan threw us a strange look, like she was trying to figure something out. Then she said, "Shit, shit, shit. You don't have to worry. He's not Paul's father." I backed up and looked at her. I went to grab her, but the doctor stopped me and told me not to do it now. I asked her what the hell she was talking about. The doctor told her that she needed to bring her father here to save Paul. I turned and walked away. Then I stopped, turned back around, dropped my wedding ring on the floor, and walked into the room to see Paul. I could even think about the fact that he wasn't my son at this point. I just wanted him to get the help he needed. When Megan and the doctor entered the room, I turned and walked out. The doctor grabbed my hand and told me I needed to stay, because Paul needed both of us right now, so I stayed. Later that night, Paul's father came in. About an hour later, my brother Carlton showed up. I was about to go and tell him what was going on when I saw that blood had been drawn. Paul's father was Megan's brother-in-law, my brother Carlton. Then he, the doctor, and Megan left the room. I had my own answer. Carlton came in, trying to explain what had happened. I left the room. It was too much for me to handle. When I went out to the waiting room, Carlton's wife Abby was sitting there with her arms around her head crying. I didn't know if it was because of Paul or because of what she had found out about Carlton and Megan. Either way, it didn't matter. Both problems were ruined. The doctor came over and asked if he could talk to me for a second. He told me that I needed to pull myself together and be there for Paul and Megan. They were going to need me. I asked him, how do I do that? You're such a big fucking man. Tell me, how can I be there for this slut? Did she just tell me my son is my nephew? She's been sleeping with my brother for God knows how long, but we've known for at least 18 years because Paul is his son. And what am I supposed to do with Carlton? I can't call him my brother anymore. What kind of brother is it that has his brother's wife and leaves him to raise the kids? But since you're a doctor, maybe you can give me something for that. Maybe you can get me some goggles to detect walking chicks. Do they have a pill after the get this cheating girl and my brother out of my life affair? Maybe you know a way to erase that bitch from my memory. That's what I thought. So get off my back and try to fix Paul. You can't help my marriage or my life. Doc shook his head, then turned and walked back to Paul's room. I walked over to Abby and asked what Carlton had told her. She said that all 3 of my children were his children. Carlton said that Megan had told him that I was infertile. That was new to me, and how would she know? I was only in the hospital for one reason, and I was 10 years old at the time. Something was going on, and I needed to find answers. It was 11:30 the next morning before the doctor told us that Paul was going to be okay. Carlton's kidney was a perfect match. I was headed for the exit when Megan and the doctor ran up to me just as the door was closing. Megan went to grab me when the doctor stopped her. I would spit in her face. Megan asked where I was going. What about our son, Paul? That struck me as funny. Our son. I turned and walked away. I got home around 2:30 in the afternoon after a brief stop at Home Depot for a couple sets of locks. I changed the locks on the house, then I started packing Megan's clothes. I had 4 bags packed before I got the first call. It was her dad, who wanted to come over and talk before I did something stupid. Some people like what I asked him? Come on, Papa. What reason do I have to do something stupid? Before he could say another word, I threw the phone down. As I packed Megan's things, it made me think about Paul and everything that had happened. It made me revisit all the long discussions in psychology class. Nature versus nurture. Did Paul's DNA make him my son? Of course, in my heart, he was mine. From the first moments of his life, from his first steps, from the moment he first caught a soccer ball, his first fight, his first date, his first kiss, talking to him about the birds and the bees, all of those things made him my son, didn't they? But when he really needed his father, the truth was, I wasn't me. When he needed blood and kidneys, both of which I would have gladly given him, I couldn't. At the times when he really needed it, I could only sit there helplessly because Megan turned out to be a cheater and a goober. The moment the doctor said he needed a kidney, he was not my son. My family name would continue, but what about my branch of the family tree? There would be no Harold Paxton branch. Of course, there were 7 sprouts on Carlton's branch. The 4 children he had with Abby and the 3 children with Megan that made Carlton the family stud. I had to stop thinking for a while because I was giving myself a vacation. I walked over to the refrigerator, grabbed a beer, and sat down in my deep chair. I was just turning on the TV when I heard some cars pulling up. I didn't move. I sat there drinking my beer and listened to them banging on the door. It sounded like there were 4 or 5 people there. They had been knocking for about 10 minutes when Megan pulled up. I think it was my dad telling her to open the door with his key. I bet they were pretty surprised when her key didn't work. After I finished my beer, I grabbed my gun off the table, walked over and unlocked the door. I asked my dad what they wanted. My father asked, why I had a gun. I told him it was to keep uninvited guests out. I asked them again, what did they want? My father was the company rep. He asked if they could come in and talk to me. I told them sure, as long as Carlton and Megan weren't with them. Megan was sitting on the porch crying while Carlton was about to show me what kind of man he was. That was until he heard me push back the slide on my Desert Eagle. I think that was the moment they realized it wasn't going to go the way they thought it would. So for the next 2 hours they blabbered on. Everyone knew except Abby and me. I couldn't believe that these people were my relatives. My father, the man who taught me how to deal with my cheating wife, now wanted me to live with her. Strange how being a grandparent can cloud your thinking. Son, she did what she had to do. She gave you the family you wanted. You need to calm down and realize how Megan felt. I didn't do that, and I wasn't going to try to do that. I'm done. Screw them all. I will never understand how a woman wanting a child can be a reason to go and get laid to accomplish her goal. Is there any difference for a man who wants to have a child with his wife only to find out she can't have one for him? Ops, I forgot that only women can be allowed to cheat under these guidelines. It seems only another woman can understand what it's like to not be able to give birth. I think men don't want families who don't want to watch their baby grow in their couple's belly. They don't experience the joy of taking care of their loved one, their life partner, during that time. I guess I'm not a man then. With all the nonsense they were spouting, and it was just bullshit about how I need to think about kids and how to keep the family together. They were giving me all this bullshit about how women can't pass out when they can't have kids, and about how women are emotional beings and need to continue to procreate. Then they hit me with this blessing from above. That's when I couldn't take it anymore and told them all to get the hell out. She's a fucking cheater, a whore, and bore my brother children. That's a blessing. If it's a blessing, I need to change my beliefs. Turns out my mom told her I couldn't have kids because I had yellow fever when I was 10. She told Megan, but forgot to tell me, which mom? After I put them all out about an hour later, the kids showed up. They told me that Megan had called them, but told them to come to her parents' house first. They came home first. I spent the next hour explaining to them what had happened. I wasn't holding anything back. Jessica didn't believe it. She called and made an appointment to get blood for DNA testing. Then she was going to see Megan. Tommy said it didn't matter because I was his father no matter what. But he went along with Jessica's plan because he needed to know. The next day, we all went to the hospital, checked on Paul, and then had blood drawn for testing. After that, Jessica went to visit Megan, Tommy and I watched Paul for a few hours, and then we went back to the house. Needless to say, the atmosphere in the house was very tense for the next few days. On the 3rd day, we got a call from the hospital with the results. Turns out, only Jessica was mine. There were so many blank shots that Tommy got angry and left because it meant Megan had been cheating since the 2nd year of our marriage. Not 2 years later, she got pregnant with Tommy 18 months later. I filed for divorce the same day the results came back. I gave my attorney the results of the DNA test. I didn't want 50-50, I wanted everything. You see, I'm a firm believer in equal rights. When a man cheats, everyone yells, "Take him to the cleaners." Don't get mad, get everything. But when it's a man being cheated on, it's, "What did you do? Are you sure? Maybe it's hormones? You need to give her some help," instead of divorcing her. I can't tell you how many friends I lost in the days that followed. I lost both my parents and in-laws because they knew all along. At the final meeting, Megan asked for 30 minutes alone. After 25 years of marriage, 23 years and 4 months of lies, but who's counting? I could have sat down and heard one more lie. Even during our last meeting, everything was in question. "Harold, haven't I been a good wife to you?" Harold, think about it. Are you missing something? After all the love we've shared, do you really want to tear us apart? I mean, really? Harold, why do you want to leave? I gave her 30 minutes, but in the end I asked her one question. It wasn't a hard question, but it was the one question she didn't have an answer for. I spent the next 10 minutes summarizing everything that had happened in the last 2 years of our marriage. Then I asked Megan why I should want to stay. Then I got up and left. The divorce was finalized in 90 days. No alimony on my part, no child support, nothing. Megan ended up paying me $350 a month in child support for 5 years. There was no house to put on the market. I gave the house to Jessica. I lived there for free. When it comes to our finances, I had no job and therefore no paycheck. I quit the day before the DNA results came back. She cheated on me for 20-plus years and some judge was going to make me pay her for it. I don't have any money in the bank. I used it to pay Paul's medical bills. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. The only good thing was that Abby stopped by to let me know that my parents, along with Megan and Carlton, were planning to ambush me to talk to them and be a family again. Abby and I spent the next 3 hours making plans and playing. Carlton was stupid because Abby had 38 DD. I won't tell you what else she had because I wanted to use it again. But by the end of the day, Paul, Tommy, and I had to go on a cruise during their visit. When we got back from the cruise, Jessica informed me that my attorney was ready to file a lawsuit against Carlton for 23 years of unpaid child support. We were asking for $350,000 for each child. College, cars, and all, after all, kids are expensive. As soon as the suit was filed, Abby filed for divorce. I never adopted Paul or Tommy. They didn't want me to. They knew I was a father, if not by blood, then out of love for being there for them. Paul said no one could make a real cuckold out of me just because his mother was a screw-up, and I wasn't. Tommy agreed. It's been 10 years, I'm 62, have 5 and 10-year-old kids. My wife Abby is 52. Yes, Abby told me. I'll never admit it, but I like spending Carlton alimony on nice things for my kids, and no, I didn't marry Abby out of revenge. It doesn't hurt me one bit to rub our relationship in Carlton's face. Megan, well, she told Jessica that she would wait until the end of time and get me back someday. Even Jessica laughs at that. My parents are burning holes in Jessica and Abby's ears. Please invite Harold to come visit us. We're going to die soon, and he's going to hate himself for not being here. Hate myself for missing the lives of those who wanted to toot my horn by calling themselves my loved ones. But forgive them? That's unlikely. I'll consider forgiving them on their deathbed. But that's also unlikely. I mean, they're 80 and 82, and they have Carlton. I gotta go. The kids are spending the night with Jessica and Paul.